So thank you all for coming for this session. It's only 1 hour for a big subject about digital and digital transformation. It's a very wide subject, and we can lose our track if we don't focus. So this session is being organized by within the large-scale policy event in which we are attending, that the European Commission has organized as a major step in the formal approval process of Horizon Europe. So Horizon Europe will cover the period from 2021 to 2027, which is a way to push the Horizon 2020 further. Horizon Europe also has provided a strategic planning that will set key orientations for European partnerships. It will focus on key technologies and strategic value chains. Value chains are really very important, particularly for Europe, to make it stronger. And the digital in general, I would not focus on only the digital technologies, but on digital in general, is core. It is the fuel who is supporting many application sectors. It includes microelectronics, embedded and integrated systems, photonics, software technologies, high-performance computing, which are a little bit the focus of today, but there are many others, and particularly artificial intelligence that depends on all the items I just mentioned. This session is also it is a co-design session. It means that it has an aim, which is to provide inputs to the consultation process for the future activities of area of interest that has been put as part of the strategic planning. And the conclusions will be summarized and fed into this ongoing process for the adoption of Horizon Europe, as I mentioned before. So now it is time to start, and I would like to welcome our speakers today, particularly our co-chairs, who will provide us with the context and the main priority from the European and national perspectives. The session is more oriented to policy and policy making than of speaking about technology, but of course we will not avoid speaking about technologies, because I know that many of you have an engineered background. So, and also we have 4 panelists that are coming from 4 different sectors and 4 different type of activities, but you will see that they have commonalities through the use of the digital with a big D, which their activities rely. They give us their standing point of view from the user and application side, and also based on their experience in their organizations and their internationally recognized scientific records. So now the floor is for Colette Maloney, who is the head of unit competitive microelectronics. She is replacing Lucia Scioli, who was announced in the beginning, but Lucia is having today her first meeting with our new commissioner. So, Colette, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Laila, for the introduction. So on behalf of the Commission, I'd like to say a few words of introduction to today's session on key digital technologies, and also on the notion of strategic supply chains, which is a topic that is getting increasing attention in the world of today, and not just from Europe. I'll begin with a word of clarification to the title. Key digital technologies shouldn't be understood as referring solely to the proposed partnership on key digital technologies, which actually is intended to follow on from the current Excel partnership. We'll be talking about electronics, which is the center of gravity of the current Excel partnership that covers electronics components and systems, including related software and related photonics. But we'll also be talking about photonics in general, about cloud services, about high-performance computing, and importantly, applications in each of these cases. So digital technology today is playing an ever greater role in the lives of citizens, in business and in government. And it goes without saying that its impact has been profound. In particular, with the mainstreaming of artificial intelligence, it will become even more so. Our dependency on digital technologies is such that Europe cannot afford to take them for granted, in particular in today's geopolitical context, and no region is taking digital technologies for granted. Digital technologies, as you can see from the slide in front of you, it will rank among the highest priorities of the new Commission. Our intention is to make the best use of our political instruments, in particular finance to research and innovation, experimentation, test and deployment, but also through policy and through regulation to maximise the impact for the good of European citizens and businesses. We intend also to work even more closely with national authorities and even regions in order to align our strategies and our financial support where it makes sense, and to allow us to set even more ambitious goals and ultimately reap the benefits of those for Europe. And Ben will say a little bit more on that after I've finished. And today's event, you all know it's about partnerships. And partnerships, just to be clear, are not about setting money aside for particular communities, and nor are they about developing technology for the sake of it. Partnerships are about setting ambitious and relevant objectives in which stakeholders are willing to invest as well. And they're about linking technologies and applications. That's a key element of the partnerships that we will be discussing today. And we will see this hopefully as the session evolves. A few words just on supply chains and technology autonomy. It's becoming increasingly important for our economy that our supply chains are robust. It's particularly important as we undergo digital transformation. Key industries can collapse if, for whatever reason, they cannot get hold of essential components. And the consequences of that are both economic and social. As trade wars loom, depending on imports, has risks, and the risks are obvious. Moreover, dependency on specific technology, specific vendors can limit a company or even an entire region's capacity to innovate freely and to be competitive in new markets. But we have to recognise too that complete autonomy will be a pipe dream. We'll need to make choices, and on that we look forward to the views of the panel today. On a more optimistic note too, technology continues to develop, new applications emerge and opportunities with them. So we also look forward to the panel today to hear their views on how Europe can profit from the new opportunities that are emerging. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Colette, for this nice in setting the context for our discussions. Before inviting our next speaker, before inviting Ben Ruck, I would just like to highlight that the session is also made for you to ask questions, give comments, and bring some ideas. So please stock them, because the time will come for the Q&A part of our session today. So now it's time to ask Ben to come. Ben is a senior policy advisor at the Netherlands Ministry of Economic Affairs and Climate Policy. He also has in his very rich career the fact that since 2014, Ben has been the chairperson of XLGU Public Authority Boards. I don't know if you are familiar with this, but many here in the room, I know they know it quite well. And this public authority board regroup representatives from over 25 participating countries and also the European Commission, and they jointly decide on the funding of Excel joint undertaking projects. So Ben, please let us have some insight of your this point of great interest for all.
Thank you, Laila, and good morning to you. I'm going to talk a little bit about the past, the present, and the future. And of course, the background here is the new initiative in key digital technologies, but it has a basis in earlier initiatives we did under the Framework 7 program and the current Horizon 2020 program. Excel, mentioned by Laila already, the current joint undertaking in electronic components and systems, has been on the way for 5 years now, and it is entering an important phase. We're looking backwards to its first achievements and impact, and at the same time we're looking forward to the new role and challenges of a partnership in key digital technologies under the next Horizon Europe Research and Development Program. And what lessons can we now learn from Excel? Now, I have some first impressions, and I think it's of course a little bit bold if you are the chair of the funding authorities that you say we haven't done too bad in moving from a primarily joint research and development initiative towards a far more strategic program aimed at addressing societally relevant objectives using state-of-the-art ECS technologies. And in this program, technology and applications go hand in hand. Now, allow me to give you some general facts and figures to show a little bit the substance and the importance of Excel as a program. Over the last 5 years, Excel has promoted roughly 64 projects involving more than 2,000 beneficiaries, representing a total cost of 3.3 billion euros. Those beneficiaries were granted 830 million euros funding from the European Union and roughly 770 million euros funding from national budgets from participating countries in Excel. And the projects are very different. They range from electronics and systems required for autonomous electric vehicles, introducing artificial intelligence systems in agriculture, developing neuromorphic technology and edge computing, architectures for the Internet of Things, developing software platforms for drone swarms both in the air and in the sea, making whole production chains smart and connecting those for efficient manufacturing, ultra-low power computing, and the advanced technologies in lithography and metrology required to make those components and other integrating whole value chains in collaborative projects to create synergies for guaranteed impact and so on and so forth. And if you want to see a little bit more about this, I would heartily invite you to visit the Excel stand, which is here at the Expo, so there you get more detailed information. Now, this tripartite model in which industry, participating states and the EU created a strategic partnership started already under the 7th Framework Program with the 2 programs, ENIAC and Artemis, in electronics and in embedded systems. And continued under Excel, it has proven to be really sustainable. Sustainable in a way that we have been able to develop and execute groundbreaking projects of a pan-European dimension, addressing priorities of both participating states and the EU as a whole. And I think we can safely say that Excel has successfully merged national and EU budgets and policies in view of strengthening the global competitiveness of the European electronic components and systems industry. So far, so good, one might say, but then can we present a credible evidence for our success? We can say that it is important, we can say that we have projects, but is it really the case? Now, to shed light on this question, Excel commissioned recently a comprehensive impact assessment. This project that's being executed by Deloitte aims at addressing the impact of the Excel joint undertaking since its creation in 2014, taking into account the legacy of its predecessors, ENIAC and Artemis joint undertakings from the previous framework program. So we are not assessing the actual functioning of Excel as a joint undertaking, but we are trying to find evidence of what Excel contributed to, what it allowed to emerge or to develop, what industrial take-up it initiated, what impact it generated regarding national priorities and funding, to what extent SMEs benefited from the program, and how it did influence the ECS community in general. So in short, what difference does Excel, with its unique approach, make for Europe? All Excel stakeholders, and I see that there are stakeholders in this room, will be actively involved in this assessment. We expect to present the results of this impact assessment at FX in Helsinki in November this year. So this about the present, and what about the future? I think most of the audience here present today is interested either or actively involved even in the discussions about the future of Excel in the new European Framework Program for RTD, Horizon Europe. And I think I can safely say we must have done something right, because the tripartite approach will be further developed and applied to other areas in Horizon Europe. The future of Excel will most likely be shaped in a new institutionalized partnership in the field of key digital technologies, and that is the topic we discuss here today. This and next year will be crucial for this process. From the past experience in Excel and its predecessors, ENIAC and Artemis, we have learned useful lessons about working together effectively in a rather complicated structure like the tripartite joint undertaking. Many things, I think, I can safely say that, run smoothly, but of course there is always room for improvement. And let me name just 3 aspects by way of example. First, I think we really should try to limit the administrative burden imposed on all stakeholders to the essential minimum. Ironically, sometimes the quest we all have for simplification seems to lead to more complexity. And the people who are actively involved in Excel know exactly what I mean. In that context, for instance, the issue of central management of funding is of course relevant. Central management of funding means that we try to bring the national budgets and the EU budget at least not together in terms that it all goes into a common pot, but that we try to allocate it in an efficient way, taking account of all the national rules and regulation. It's relevant, but it is not so easy to organize, since it touches upon, like I said, national funding rules and regulations. So we have to balance possible conflicting interests here. Not an easy task. Critical, I think, to the success of any tripartite joint undertaking is maintaining the proper balance between the EU contribution and the national contribution. And the people familiar with Excel know that I'm talking about the one-to-one relationship. A euro from the EU should be matched with a euro from the participating countries. I think it's not easy, because we now are applying national funding rules and EU funding rules. So it will be very difficult to get a completely one-to-one match in the funding, because there are different basic conditions being applied. It is a point of attention when we are drafting the new JU regulation for key digital technologies. And last but not least, I would say, let's not be afraid to communicate the results of our efforts to all the relevant audience. We do it today at the Excel stand. Again, visit it in a coordinated way, but we should do better. We did well, we did recently better than we did in the past, but given the huge joint investment of all the three stakeholders, this message could be much stronger. And let's bear in mind that we're talking about very essential enabling technologies that are the basis of many of the innovations we are discussing at this venue today and tomorrow here. So in that sense, we should not be too modest. Excel provides valuable lessons for a future partnership in KDT. Let's not be afraid of defining new ambitious goals for a future partnership in the next framework program. Our global competitors will not be dormant, and Europe must take all action possible to remain at the forefront of ECS technology and new applications. Having said that, it is good to see that the new Commission gives the digitalization of our society a very prominent place. So in conclusion, I would say this morning's session should provide important input for the preparation of a credible successor to Excel. The results of Excel, in my view, clearly show that this unique approach of a strategic tripartite partnership is paying off. And I would conclude by saying, I think, and I'm really convinced of that, we are sitting on gold. Let's not waste it. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much, Colette and Ben. In fact, you answered already many of the questions I was asking myself how to formulate them here today with you. So there are already a number of issues that you clarified, and thank you very much for this. But we have to push the limit a little bit further, and I count on the audience to come with some harder questions for our co-chairs. Before we go to the next part, I would like from your side to give us a kind of a statement that we can quote and report and take it as a takeaway with us at home, and to remember the most important thing you have been raising during your speeches. Maybe we will do this at the end. We will gather, because I will ask the same from our distinguished panelists. So now it's time to go to the next point of the agenda, and to ask the panelists to come and to sit here. And I will start by giving the floor to Christian Scheer. So don't sit, Christian. You will be standing with me. Christian is a principal engineer at the Advanced Solution Lab of AVL in Karlsruhe in Germany. Christian is involved in the development of new methods and tools for highly automated and electrified mobility systems in automotive, agriculture, and maritime domains. And he is also having a proven experience in numerous research projects in Artemis and Excel GU. So please, Christian, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Laila, for the nice introduction. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I was asked on a short notice to contribute to the event today and give some views from the automotive point of view. Okay, when we talk about automotive, I mean, it's directly related to two of the four basic principles of European freedom we enjoy since a long time, and hopefully much more time to come, which is the movement of goods and the movement of people. We take that for granted, but currently we see really fast and disruptive changes in mainly the societal environment for the automotive industry. Just 4 pictures from the last weeks. You might have seen in the press, Frankfurt Motor Show. No? Even the name says International Automotive Exhibition. It will be changed to Mobility Systems Exhibition in 2 years. on one side, inside, you see cars which are still reflecting a personal status. I'm not talking about wealth and whatever comes with that. At the same time, we see a strong, let's say, resistance against such vehicles. People call them climate killers. Yeah, outside and even inside. It's an actual picture. Yeah. So and if you're a manufacturer of cars, you really think twice now. What is your future policy selling these products? On the other side, if you look outside, it's just a few miles away. There is incredible new technology upcoming. It's called, for example, an e-highway, so that you can run trucks purely electric for some mileage. At the same time, we still have incredible high fatality rates because the assistance systems in the trucks are not switched on, yeah, and they're not existing because the technology is there. And I'm personally afraid in certain conditions to drive on at least German highways because they're rolling stocks, yeah. And when you look at the certain times of the day, I mean, you see so many trucks just carrying parcels back and forth from the distribution centers because people click on the internet and they take it for granted that all these parcels come overnight the next day, yeah. That's just a matter of fact. When we look into the future, well, I mean, I think it's a social agreement. We want to live in smart cities, which are connected by smart railways, roads, and waterways. I'm not talking about air transport in Europe, but these socially accepted mobility systems, they must, of course, be eco-friendly and they must be safe and all these issues. So it boils down that we need electronics and embedded systems as a key technology to enable and to achieve this goal in the automotive domain. Just give you an example. Some of who might have seen this nice prototype vehicle from Valeo in the exhibition, and currently it can do a lot. It can go up to level 4 automated driving. But when you look, it takes more than 25% of the energy, overall energy, just to operate the sensors and the computing systems on board. And if you're honest, you cannot transport something really useful because everything is packed with electronics. That's not feasible from a user point of view. So we have to bring the intelligence, the software into the specific chips. We have to bring down the application into the hardware. So what do we need for that? We need a lot of people, not only on high scientific level, on high engineering level, who are capable to bring in all this new technology. I studied mechanical engineering, with a bunch of tools, and we saw the first computers. Nowadays I'm concerned with artificial intelligence, coming back to aerospace engineering, looking even to ethics. What's the best decision if you run level 5 unmanned vehicles? So the computing performance is key, that we can enable all these future visions on an industrial level. And for that, we need a deep vertical integration. We want to be independent from other parts of the world. We need independence in the European value chain so that we can really create this value chain inside the large-scale European partnership programs. Doing all of that, of course, the artificial intelligence and data analytics is necessary and will accompany us, but we need also not only the technology there, we need also the right people with the right mindset to bring that vision really to life in a couple of years, and hopefully we will experience that. Okay, thank you very much, and look forward for the discussion.
So now, Francisco, you've done very well, Christian, because the topic is rather large, and we don't have time to go deeper into each of the keywords you have pronounced. And but we will come back to the issue you have opened. So may I now introduce Francesca. Francesca Russi is a principal researcher at the Institute of Applied Physics Nello Carrara of the Italian National Research Council. She is actively involved in transfer of technology activities, and she authored over 120 scientific publications. Bravo. And she is also an inventor of 8 patents that led to 2 medical devices successfully used in the clinical practices. And Francesca will talk about photonics in health.
Thank you for the introduction, and good morning to all of you. First of all, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the word photonics, but it's an old Greek word that it is photos, that just means light. So photonics is just light, and devices to use light and see light. So if you go to the website, you can find a sketch like this. Where you can see where photonics is positioned in an electromagnetic spectrum, and in the bottom of this image you just can see some of the application that goes from gamma radiation to terahertz in the biomedical fields. But next slide, and just have fun 1 minute. When I was a kid, it was a dream to have something like this. We saw in Star Trek, just a light to have a healing of an abrasion. So something that is no pain, is fast, and is so useful. And now it's a reality. Next slide. We were successful in producing a device that is based on a blue LED light, so it's really cheap. And with 1 minute of treatment, with no pain for the patient, and we can provide a healing in all those wounds that are really an impairment for the daily life of several people, a huge amount of people in the world, because these wounds are chronic wounds, so they are wounds stable in time. They stay there for years. And this one in this picture is really nice wound, but you have to imagine tendons exposed and the situation really painful for the patients. And we provided a way through photobiomodulation to start the healing of these wounds with application in patients with cardiovascular problems, old-aged patients, and so on. And this was possible thanks to the collaboration of our research institute, me in person, and with the small companies from Tuscany producing the device now, and the medical doctors. And thanks to the funding of our region and European fundings. But what is the future? I think that all of you know that thing that is put on your finger to monitor blood, the blood saturation, but think that in the future we can have something that is really thin, really like a patch put on your skin to monitor different parameters. So for example, to monitor a treatment in for example, diabetic patient, or to diagnose a disease before it's invasion, we may say, of your whole body. Another application of photonics, for example, is photoacoustics, that we believe that in the near future we'll be able to see cancer cells, so to have a diagnosis of cancer really in time to prevent the growth in your body. And what about the market of medical technologies in Europe? I recently participated to the activities of a CSA funded by the European Union and with the support of our platform, Photonics 21. And we investigated the photonics ecosystem focusing in medical technologies, agriculture, and food. And what we saw is that in Europe we have a really huge potential because we have companies that are in the whole value chain. So we have small companies that are producing optical components, light sources, but we also have the end users of this technology. So it's important to combine the offer of technology and the needs that comes mainly from the medical fields. And another point that was important addressed by this project is a new application. The agriculture field and the food field is really a huge market where our technology can be easily transferred. And for example, in the future, you can have greenhouses, really smart, with special lights and special sensors that can face the climate change problem. And there are some people that is designing these greenhouses to be sent on Mars, for example, or in other planets, and to have our food, or to develop a precision, what is called precision agriculture, For example, you can monitor the water content in your fruit or your vegetables during the growth, and you know where to add water, so you don't use water that is not necessary in some part of your lands, of your soil. The same for the pesticide. It's possible to see the growth of these plants and to decide where to use the pesticide, so that we will have a precision treatment just in a portion of the land, in a portion of the fields, and so that we will arrive to this precision agriculture for healthier food, also for our health. Thank you.
So Photonics is rescue us, the citizen, both on health and agriculture and food. I think the two topics are very important for any citizen in Europe and in the world. So now it's Anna, and Anna will talk about us. Will talk to us about a very different topic, yes, which is cloud. About the cloud, because Ana Juan Ferrer is the head of the lab of next generation cloud lab in Atos in the research and the innovation department. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Laia. Thank you very much for being here. My presentation it's on another digital technology on cloud computing, quite different to the rest of things. If you would like to start. Cloud computing, it is quite a stabilized technology nowadays, but of course it is advancing and it is changing. We are now at this specific time in a new wave for cloud computing, which is edge computing. It's bringing a decentralization of the capacity of the computation capacity that for some years we have relied on centralized data centers in which we were having the illusion of infinite capacity and in which everything was provided as a service. And we are now moving to edge computing, to bring in the computational infrastructures closer to the data sources. But and this has been the first step of this decentralization, but we have we and many researchers worldwide, we have the impression that this is only a first step. Edge computing with dedicated devices, it is starting to be present in the market, but this will go further, because we are finding that nowadays we have the capacity to embed computation into many devices, and also many of the sensors, and that before they were very simple sensors. We are nowadays capable of embedding significant computing capacity into them. So this is bringing a lot of new opportunities to the field of edge computing that still are not really in the market, but as the devices start to emerge, if you want to put next, please. As the devices start to emerge, we think that we will be seeing this soon in the market, and the driver of requiring that much computation at the edge, and this combination of computation at the edge and computation at the cloud, it is the artificial intelligence. We are requiring why a drone is carrying out some computing capacity, or why a robot is doing that, because we are asking these devices to have a kind of intelligent behavior. We are not nowadays happy that they take photograph only, a drone for example, but we would like to have some online processing of this photograph while the drone is flying, or we even want to have more intelligent behaviors over this. But the problem is that this kind of devices, if we augment the computing capacity, we are augmenting the energy consumption, as the colleague was mentioning for the connected vehicle. It is exactly the same case. If we augment the compute capacity, we reduce the autonomy at the end of the day. So we need to have really a compromise among in these devices and in general in all the computation management in this environment. We have two resources that are in high demand. One it is energy, and the other one it is the capacity of compute. And we need to arrive to the right balance in the management of this computation and environment. Where, in what cases are we seeing that artificial intelligence executed at the edge, but in combination with cloud, is really starting to happen today? Yeah? These are cases that we are experimenting with pilots, and which are the ones that most probably will arrive to the market area. It is Industry 4.0. Clearly, because it's quite interesting case, because it's with network conditions that are controlled, where the environment is closed. This is for Internet of Things, an environment that's easy for initial experimentation. And also another aspect that we are experiencing with this kind of smart devices, such as drones, it is security, physical security in some places, and also in smart energy and in utilities, because there are some cases in which surveillance of some areas or for maintenance, for example, it is very much of interest. Next, please. And the requirement that we are having for computing at the edge, we are finding two kind of different solutions in the management. One is the exploitation of heterogeneity. We are having this kind of devices with this capacity of having computation in a diversity of things, because for some years Moore's law has allowed to produce smaller processors with higher capacities. The experts, I'm not one of them, but the experts say that this progress will slow down at some point, and not very late. So one way of getting additional capacity is the exploration of heterogeneity. Another way it is to do what we do in distributed systems, like cloud computing for many years, which is to try not to work in single machines, but to distribute the compute in many devices. So we are thinking that in the short term, or more or less short term, we will have something like swarms of computing devices, in having the same concept you have had in robotics for many years, of the self-organization of robots, of teams of robots. We think we will arrive to this in cloud computing in the coming years. Some authors are calling this ad hoc cloud. Others call it swarm computing. You know, there is not yet established name for this, but it is something that we are seeing for the future. And in the long term, something that it is very much of interest for Atos as a company, and I think that in general for Europe, it is the development of quantum computing for additional steps, and also as something that requires policy investment because of the strategic characteristics of the technology. And this is all from my side.
Thank you very much, Anna. I think you opened the wide world of the cloud and cloud computing, and I think that for our subject today, it shows that there are still many things to explore and to mature. So going up from the cloud computing to the real clouds, may I introduce you Peter Bauer, who is Deputy Director of Research at the ECMWF. It's difficult to pronounce. It is the European Center for Medium-Range Weather Forecasts, so you can understand the relationship with the clouds. He has an international career because he already was fellowship working at the U.S. National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration, the NASA at the US, and IPSL in France, and now more recently in Germany, Helmholtz Society International Fellow Award. Please, Peter.
Thank you very much for the introduction. Let me start with apologizing for the weather. The forecast was good though. And I need to mention, or repeat probably, the place I'm coming from, because I'm sure you don't know it. The European Center for Medium Range Weather Forecasts, you can see the logo in the top left. I should go higher. Sorry. Has been founded about 40 years ago and has been a success of European collaboration all along. It was funded by its member states to pool intellectual and funding resources in one place and to do something that not a single member state could actually achieve, which is to crack the nut of how to predict weather reliably well into the medium range, which is weeks and months ahead. And it has been a success story because Europe is leading at that. I didn't know, I'm sure you didn't know that. We have been relying on high-performance computing all along. As you can imagine, we're simulating what you see outside in our numerical models. So it's basically a virtual Earth that we're trying to replicate in our models. And we have to do that very fast because you need your forecasts very fast. And incidentally, that requires high-performance computing. And we have been doing this relying entirely on foreign technology for that. It has been Intel-type chips, for example, for the last decade or so. And it has been Crays, Fujitsu's, IBM's all along. So despite the success of numerical weather prediction and climate prediction, and they belong in terms of this high-performance computing and technology view to the same class, despite our success, if you look at the latest United Nations report in terms of loss of life and economic value over the past 20 years caused by extremes, just the part on weather extremes, so not counting earthquakes and things, over the past 20 years, over 1 million lives lost, and over $2 trillion US dollars in terms of economic losses. So, there is a question of what we need to do to overcome that problem and improve so that we can save lives and value in the future. And we have ideas of how to do that, but we need much enhanced simulation capabilities for that, so much better models, that is, much more realistic virtual Earth systems outside. We need to be more clever in combining observations and these models to extract the information from both to constrain the problem. And of course, it doesn't stop by predicting the weather, so rain rates or temperature in a place, but by translating that into value for citizens, for industries like food, energy, water, but also in terms of extremes, in terms of hazards prediction. And if you do that calculation on the back of an envelope of what kind of system you would require in terms of simulation system, it's an exascale problem. That's 10 million of these. That's a big problem. So an exascale problem in terms of computing comes with an exabyte problem in terms of data management. Okay? So computing and data handling, big data handling, is identical for us. And we've been doing this for a long time, and we need to do it so much better. And that's a factor of 100 better than today. Okay? So if we can't achieve that, then what's down there in terms of European Green Deal and what the prediction community can contribute to achieving that goal will be a problem. So if we look into the future, we require a different approach to exploiting digital technologies and new technologies, actually. There are some activities in Europe already with the Euro-HPC joint undertaking that is paving the way to achieve that with European IPR, but we need more than that because we need a flexibility. We don't want to be locked into a specific architecture. We want to achieve our problem, manage our problem on any kind of architecture that's there. And a lot of what Anna has mentioned is actually relevant to us as well. So it's not just HPC, but the entire loop, the digital continuum that you see in the top right corner there. So we are affected by technology of edge computing, cloud computing, swarm computing, heterogeneous computing across CPUs, GPUs, any kind of processor. IoT data. We assimilate today already hundreds of millions of observations per day. If you add observations from these, it will be many, many billions. How do we manage that? Okay? So what we do is an HPC problem, but it's so much more. And your HPC actually offers us an opportunity to tackle that. But providing the architecture and the hardware is not enough. We need a significant investment in software and in advancing our applications actually to be able to exploit these technologies. There are some projects that are actually proposing roadmaps for how to achieve that. I mentioned Extreme Earth, which you can Google there, which is trying to do that. We're still trying to kind of get it over the hill in terms of funding. But in the end, I think when we talk about climate science, weather extremes, an important message to take home here is, you know, we can invest in energy neutrality in Europe, and that's what we want to achieve as soon as possible to counteract climate change. But we need to advance our prediction capabilities in any case, because extremes will happen tomorrow, will happen next year in any case, regardless of what we do in terms of carbon neutral Europe. Otherwise, and this is a quotation here from the World Economic Forum, we will be sleepwalking into a catastrophe, actually. If we go to the next slide, I actually respond to your take-home message already here in written form. So given what the European Commission has laid out as its plan in terms of digital technology evolution, I think we have actually an opportunity here to achieve something that nobody else can do. And that's for the 5 or 10 next years in terms of weather and climate prediction, which is of highest societal impact across everything in terms of lives and value, to achieve something that nobody else can do. But it needs a significant investment in the technology itself and in us being able to exploit it. So it's a hardware and software problem. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for widening the scope of all this digital use for the weather forecast. I think we should make a match between the XLGU and particularly the people who has drafted the strategic research agenda to include the weather issue and all the needs they have in computing, in prediction, in analysis. So now it's time for a few questions. Maybe I will start with one from my side, and then I will leave you to you to ask some question. Otherwise, there is really a big stock of questions that hangs around still. One of the question is the digital impact. All of you have spoke about the digital impact on the complete supply chains and the need that all the supply chain evolved. And I think particularly about the impact of to the citizen and also to the services. I think we need a kind of evolution in all this. What do you think? Maybe we can start with the mobility case, where the services has also to adapt.
Well, we see a dramatic change also in the competence on each of our levels. We are concerned from a craftsmanship level, changing from pure mechanical work to more mechatronic work, to information processing work, also in a daily maintenance support life. Yeah, we have to still have people out in the field to maintain the mobility systems, to bring them into service, yeah, to even do something in any case of emergency. On the other side of the spectrum, we need the brightest and brilliant people from all the relevant domains, and there are many now, to bring all the systems into operation, into useful production. And the second thing I think is very important, we need this vertical integration, because we cannot be depending on other parts of the world. We have to have at least a certain level of self-sufficiency in our supplies, so that we say that's our solution. We do not depend really, we can do trade and maybe get better products, but we need a certain minimum of self-sufficiency in our supply and engineering chains. No?
Mm-hmm. Someone else would like to add some comments? Anna?
I could do this, yes. In the cloud field, we have a situation in which we have major international cloud providers that are offering services to, in general, the most used in the market. The solution for this, it has been around, in fact, for many years. We were speaking about vendor lock-in to a specific cloud offering since the very early times of cloud computing. So for the customers, the cloud customers, there is a solution which is using private clouds. Another one, it is hybrid clouds. It's the combination of public with private or just multiple public clouds, so to not to be locked into a specific offering. And a field in which I think we have major opportunities in Europe, it is edge computing. It is because we have many of the building blocks for it. Of course, edge computing has multiple phases. It has the approach from the distributed systems perspective, but also from the telecoms operator, from the hardware providers. But in Europe, we have many of these elements, so I think there is opportunities there for us.
Any particular additional comments? No? Okay. So maybe I can ask you to give us one of your questions, please. Thank you. Just give your name and your affiliation.
My name is Nguyen. I'm from Norway. Thank you very much for a very informative and useful presentation. My question related to also key digital technology, but I'm not sure my understanding is correct, so I would like to ask from your view. It's about additive manufacturing, 3D printing, which I didn't see it here or mentioned. And I think it's kind of important in the sense that it can be a technology that can impact the supply global chain, since it can interact between the industry sectors, manufacturing like automotive, medical device, and other sector that it can actually leverage or shorten the supply chain. And as you mentioned, Christian, that you need a vertical integration, and also we need to reduce waste and material. Then 3D printing or additive manufacturing seems to be a method to do that. So I'm not sure if that understanding is correct or not, and I would like to ask from your insight.
Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you. Who would like to answer about additive manufacturing? Christian, or do you use additive manufacturing in your area? Maybe
I just can answer how important the use of different technologies in medicine, because we are talking about in the near future of precision medicine, personalized medicine. And for example, I told you about the wearable devices. You have lights for sensors, but you have to send some data somewhere. So it's important also how to manage the data, how many data we have, how can we interpret this, and it's important to have a merging of all the technologies that we're talking about today.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, Boel Badman from RISE. It's a large research institute in Sweden. I would like to ask Anna especially. I suppose that when you do swarm computing and edge computing, that you are using regionally sourced energy like solar voltaics and that kind of. Is there a problem with policies there?
In fact, it is not a technology that it is in swarm computing that it is deployed today. But for sure, I think that analyzing this aspect and first at the level of edge computing with static devices, analyzing the sources of data for these devices, it depends very much on the specific scenario we are talking about. If we are thinking in a smart city, maybe we have to rely in these regional sources, most probably. If we are speaking about an industry 4.0, we will have the sources of energy there in the plant. So it will has to take into account the specific deployment scenario, but for sure I think there is a lot of potential for analyzing these aspects.
Thank you. So the next question for you.
Stefano Postimucelli from Luxembourg. My question is I heard about exploitation of data. What about the valorization of data? So the possibility to create a data economy essentially creating marketplaces of data to be sold to companies who can then use them.
Yeah, maybe
Yes,
I can
Peter, start.
There's certainly a market of this kind for us, particularly at the interface of where we produce output from what we do to the sectors I mentioned, like energy, food, water, risk management, anything finance. Already now we have among our customers, commercial customers that actually do that. But you could think, if we're able to achieve what we're trying to achieve in the future, which is much more reliable predictions at local scale, regional scale, which are a lot more relevant and accessible to individual industries all over the place, actually, you could think that that could spawn entirely new industrial sectors at that interface and that add value to the information that we're providing to the best of our knowledge, and that take that forward into any kind of sector that we haven't even seen yet. So I see an enormous potential there, but it requires that breakthrough capability, I would say.
5 more
to
minutes.
really fertilize the ground from away from and beyond of what we can achieve today.
Yeah. So the last question. Sorry.
I think it's an excellent question. Just to give you a practical example, looking down at automotive cars, if you want to use artificial intelligence, you need a lot of training data now. And it's a big effort to provide that. And so that has to be somehow shared, and it has a property on it. No? It has also a strong aspect on data privacy, when you record video data outside. And it requires a new approach to all the business cases. And those things are still a big issue. We cannot squeeze it in the current processes where you have tier 2, 3, 1. So I think that's also a very interesting request for public-private partnerships to support this kind of installation of ecosystems where this kind of shared data and all the commercial and legal aspects come along with that can be handled in a fast and productive, positive way. No?
Roberto Cascella, European Cybersecurity Organization. So maybe just a quick question to some of you. I think that I like very much the last presentation of Peter Bauer with technologies that could be applied in different kind of vertical sector, which is very nice. Indeed, I think that there is a transversal, aspects, for all the different points, but I still miss like cybersecurity there, in the sense that for starting from electronics, artificial intelligence, cloud computing, car-to-car communication, health, photonics, and so on. If we don't also software, if we don't really embed inside like some cyber resilience principle, cybersecurity principle, then we need to replicate and redo all the work all the time for each one of the single sectors. So what is your view about that? Thank you.
It's a very good question because we didn't touch about it in the presentation.
But actually, this aspect actually goes beyond my technical knowledge. But I can only agree because as we are, as you say, as these integration, vertical or horizontal, whatever you want to call them, or this digital continuum, these levels increase and the distances increase, and you have more and more players and technologies interacting with one another, this aspect, of course, becomes multiplied as well. So I can only agree with that, but I cannot comment on how that actually can be implemented, for example, in our application. But I think it's a very good point.
Same from a cloud perspective. I did not appear concrete, specifically, but it has to be there, and it has to be there since the really beginning and in many points, because you have the point at the cloud, but also at the edge on how you gather data. There are multiple points here in which cybersecurity and considering it since the very beginning is critical. Otherwise, because these infrastructures are not going to be reliable enough for the users, and this is going to create issues for adoption. It's clear and agreed 100%.
I think Christian and then Colette.
Also, again, a very important aspect. I didn't mention it in my talk because it's a must, and my personal belief is that highly automated driving the most critical thing is vandalism, cybersecurity, because you have, I call it, you have the idiots and the bad guys very close by. In our road domain, we cannot just keep them away like in aviation or maybe in train applications. So we have to scope that a bunch of people who don't want always good and the perfect support our nice vision of the perfect world, yeah, for whatever motivation they attack us, yeah, on a IT level, but also on a kind of very simple level. Call it Tesla prank, yeah. So if the more we connect and automize, the more risk we have that some people really do bad with the systems, and we have to make sure that this risk keeps at a certain level. We cannot exclude the risk totally, but we must keep it low, yeah, and we must handle it somehow.
So. Colette, please.
So just from the Commission point of view, it's a really important point that you've made. We do plan, and you're probably aware of that, a separate initiative on cybersecurity, but that's not to say that it shouldn't be considered within partnerships. Well, I'll mention KDT, for example, where we have the electronics industry, the systems integrators, etc. And although it wasn't mentioned, it will be a key element there. But I think one of the jobs that we have to do better is to ensure sort of interworking or across the partnerships as well, so that they're not just islands of activity that are separate. And it's becoming more and more important in the digital domain, so we have to find a way of doing that. And just to mention that we're actually very good at trusted electronics in Europe. I mean, we're leading on that, so it's something we should exploit as well.
Unfortunately, we come to the end of the questions because time is over, but we will take a few minutes to have the statements as we agreed in the beginning. So may I start with Ben, please? Do you have a particular statement to say as a takeaway?
Well, I think one statement, and was also just highlighted by Colette, I think what is essential in these approaches is, also in KDT, but also in its predecessors, that we have a joint initiative. And I think that we had it in the pre-meeting yesterday, that we had a discussion. Sometimes we look at the US, we look at China, that these are the main examples, but we tend to forget that we are very strong in Europe in many areas of innovation and research, just because we are experts in cross-border cooperation. And I think that is a fact that we highlight in these programs, and I think that is something we should try to keep for the future.
Thank you. Colette?
I will perhaps repeat the point that I was just making, because I meant to say it this morning and I didn't. While the partnerships in themselves are important, the working between partnerships, not just in the digital domain. I think in the digital domain it is really important, but we have partnerships in other areas as well, in automotive, in at least proposed in automotive, in aeronautics, in health. I don't think we can afford to keep working in silos.
Thank you.
So just to repeat what I said earlier, I think we have a piece of gold actually with a sector, in my case, where Europe is already world leading, and that we need to propel into the next century. And I think the Digital Europe program and Euro HPC can do that. We just have to make sure that we take the applications along. So it's not just about installing hardware in places, but that we make an effective transition for all applications possible to enable them to run effectively on these technologies. And that's becoming more complicated and more difficult in the future. So there needs to be funding for this. And this is just something I want to say. Because our application comes with an enormous socio-economic impact. It's a liability that we have built up for decades in terms of climate change and responsibility. And now is the time to act.
Thank you.
From a cloud perspective, of course, the cloud it is established, as I was saying in my initial, in my presentation, but there are a lot of challenges related to artificial intelligence, to Internet of Things, and capacities of computing being spread everywhere. That it is, in my view, one opportunity for Europe to exploit and to take advantage of them.
as concerns photonics, and in particular in health. Photonics is a technology that is sustainable and low cost. So this is an added value for our companies that can produce devices that are competitive with respect to the market of the world. And from a research point of view, it is important to go deeper in the interaction of light with cells and light with tissues, biological or from the from human tissues, we may say, or plants tissue, because there are several processes that are still not known now, but that can be useful in the future for us.
So, from an automotive perspective, I think our future partnership programs must support the promise for a good, safe, and healthy life for every EU citizen. And if we can deliver that, then I think the economic success will be sure.
That's a nice word to conclude. So we believe in partnership. We hope that it will help our future to improve. And I wish you a good lunch. Thank you for participating.